Ethan Rivera always woke before dawn. It wasn't insomnia, not exactly. It was the kind of sleep that broke apart easily, the kind that snapped under the weight of a single thought rolling the wrong way. At 5:12 a.m., he lay on his back, staring at the faint glow of the digital clock on the nightstand, listening to the uneven rhythm of his wife's breathing beside him. It hadn't always been uneven. Lately, everything about her felt slightly off. Like a painting that someone had taken off the wall, dusted, rehung, but at the wrong angle. Maya had always been a calm sleeper, a deep, steady, warm presence in their quiet Hillcrest apartment. But now she turned away from him more often, curling toward the window instead of into his arms. She breathed faster, like she was chasing dreams she didn't want to share. At times, she whispered things in her sleep, fragmented, tense, unintelligible. Ethan exhaled slowly and pushed the blanket down. He needed coffee. Not just to wake up. To think. The kitchen was still dark, except for the soft amber glow of the street lamps outside spilling across the tile floor. He brewed a pot, the scent filling the small space, warm and familiar. But it didn't calm him. Not the way it used to. Something was wrong. He didn't know what, but it was there, brushing against the edges of his mind like a cold draft under a locked door. Maya had changed. Not violently. Not obviously. Her changes were soft, subtle, practiced, the kind that made a man question whether he was imagining things. She came home later from her job at the marketing firm downtown. Her phone never left her hand. She smiled more often at messages she never opened in front of him. She had started wearing perfume again, expensive perfume, the type she used to save for special nights out. But they weren't having special nights anymore. He sipped his coffee and stood by the window, watching early cyclists glide past and a dogwalker pulling a reluctant golden retriever along the sidewalk. San Diego woke slowly in November, fog rolling low over the Mission Hills, the air cool before the sun burned everything bright and warm again. Behind him, footsteps. Maya. Ethan, her soft voice murmured from the hallway. Why were you up so early? He turned his head slightly but didn't face her fully. Just thinking. About work? Yeah, he lied easily. He had grown good at lying to keep from sounding paranoid. Maya padded into the kitchen wearing a thin gray robe, her long dark hair pulled into a loose bun. She looked tired, but in the delicate way that beautiful women often look tired, gracefully, almost intentionally. She poured herself a cup and leaned on the counter opposite him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Maya said, without looking up, we should go somewhere this weekend. Ethan blinked. Go where? I don't know. La Jolla, maybe. Or up to Julian. Just, get out of the city. She hadn't suggested a weekend trip in months. Sure, he said. If you want. She nodded, still not meeting his eyes, and he noticed it again, the faint shift in her posture when her phone buzzed in the pocket of her robe. Not fear. Not guilt. Something in between, something she tried to hide by picking up her coffee too quickly. He didn't ask who it was. He didn't need to. He already knew she wouldn't tell him. Ethan left for work around 8, driving down 163 toward the office building where he worked as a senior IT technician for a medical research company in La Jolla. He stared straight ahead, but his mind circled the same questions over and over. He used to trust Maya completely. For 7 years, he never doubted her once. But sometimes trust didn't shatter in a single moment. Sometimes it frayed. On the way, he replayed small memories, little oddities that had seemed harmless at first. Maya stepping outside to take phone calls. Her texting late at night with the phone screen shielded from him. The sudden, unexplained trips to the gym, even though she had never cared about gyms in her life. He had brushed them aside. But there was one moment he couldn't shake. 3 weeks ago, when she came home from a team dinner, smelling faintly of whiskey and a cologne she didn't wear. A man's cologne. Ethan had spent the night in silence, telling himself he must be imagining it. But now, that scent haunted him like a whispered warning. At a red light, his phone chimed with a text. From his sister, Julia. You okay? Haven't heard from you. Ethan stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. He typed, deleted, retyped. Finally. Yeah. Just tired. Talk later. He wasn't ready to admit the truth. Not even to himself. When he got home that evening, the apartment was spotless, unnaturally so. Maya always kept things clean, but this was a different level, counters wiped to a shine, candles lit, fresh flowers in a vase. She was trying too hard. Or hiding too much. He found her in the bedroom, slipping earrings into her lobes. You're going out? He asked. She froze for half a second, not long enough that anyone else would notice, but long enough for a husband to see. Yeah, she said brightly. A coworker invited me to a small networking thing. I forgot to tell you. He watched her in the mirror's reflection. Her hair was curled, carefully. Her makeup flawless. Her red dress one he hadn't seen her wear in years. This wasn't networking attire. Which coworker? Ethan asked gently. She searched for a name, he could see her mind scrambling. Kim. The new project manager. Kim wasn't real. He knew the team at her office. He'd met them all. You'll be home late, he said quietly. Not too late. She grabbed her purse quickly, almost too quickly. Don't wait up. She kissed his cheek, and for the first time in their entire marriage, the kiss felt like a lie. And then she was gone. The apartment door clicked shut behind her. Ethan stood in the silence, heart pounding hard enough that he had to steady himself on the dresser. He didn't follow her. Not tonight. But the thought flickered, dangerous, electric, in the back of his mind. Maybe it was time to stop pretending. Maybe it was time to find the truth. The next morning, Maya was unusually cheerful. Too cheerful. She moved around the kitchen humming softly, her hair still curled from the night before, her eyes bright in a way that made Ethan's gut twist. She poured him coffee before he even reached the counter, something she hadn't done in months. How late were you out? He asked casually. Not late, she said. Maybe 11. He nodded, though he knew the truth. He had forced himself not to check the time when she came home. He didn't want to sit in the dark like a suspicious husband. He didn't want to become that man. But he remembered looking at the clock when he heard the front door open. 1:47 a.m. Not 11. Not even close. He watched her as she packed her bag for work. Her movements were light, relaxed, almost floating. Her phone buzzed once on the table. She glanced at it quickly, too quickly, snatched it up, and turned away to check the screen. He didn't ask who it was. He didn't have to. Something was happening. Something already far past the beginning. When she left, she gave him another too bright smile and a rushed kiss on the cheek. Have a good day, she said. Ethan swallowed. You too. The door closed. Silence settled around him like fog. He finished his coffee mechanically, then grabbed his keys. He wasn't going to work. Not today. Not until he knew. Ethan parked his car a block away from Maya's office building downtown, a sleek glass structure near Little Italy, where her marketing agency occupied the 8th floor. He hated himself for doing this. But something in his chest had cracked last night, and the fracture had spread. He waited. Watched. At 10:17 a.m., Maya walked out of the building, earlier than any normal break, then quickly crossed the street before disappearing into a parking garage. A few seconds later, a silver BMW rolled out. Not hers. Inside, through the windshield, he caught a glimpse. Maya in the passenger seat. And behind the wheel, a man. Tall. Dark-haired. Maybe late 30s. Wearing a suit too expensive for a middle management coworker. The BMW merged into traffic. Ethan started his car and followed at a distance. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. They drove north, toward La Jolla. The closer they got, the more Ethan realized the truth was dragging him somewhere he wasn't ready to go. The BMW pulled into the underground garage of a hotel, the La Valencia, an iconic pink Mediterranean-style building overlooking the ocean. Ethan parked around the corner, pulse racing. He walked to the side of the hotel, past lush bougainvillea vines spilling over the iron railings, past tourists sipping cappuccinos on the terrace, until he reached the rear pathway that led toward the beach cliffs. He stopped. There, near the terrace steps, Maya stepped out from behind a column laughing softly as the man in the suit placed a hand on her waist. Ethan exhaled sharply. His stomach dropped, like gravity had doubled. He watched, frozen, as the man leaned in. Maya kissed him. Not a quick kiss. Not a mistake. It was slow, gentle, intimate. A kiss full of familiarity. A kiss full of history. A kiss that told Ethan this hadn't started yesterday. His legs felt weak. For a moment, he thought he might fall. Maya smiled up at the man, brushing her fingers down his arm. He whispered something in her ear, and she laughed again, tilting her head against his shoulder. Ethan closed his eyes. His heart didn't break, it detonated. A sound escaped him. Not a breath. Not a gasp. Something small and wounded. The man said something to Maya, and they disappeared again through a side entrance toward the hotel lobby, toward the elevators that led to the rooms. Ethan stood there alone on the path, the ocean crashing below, the world spinning around him. He wasn't imagining it. He wasn't being paranoid. He wasn't going crazy. It was real. His wife was cheating on him. And whoever that man was, he wasn't a fling. He wasn't a random mistake. He was someone she knew deeply. Someone she trusted. Someone she let hold her without hesitation. Someone she had been lying about for a long time. 2 hours later, Ethan sat in his car, the parking lot nearly empty except for a few tourists. His hands were clenched so tight around the steering wheel that his knuckles ached. Every few minutes, he replayed the moment in his head, the kiss, the laugh, the way she melted into the man's arms. It carved into him like a blade. He had always thought he would confront her calmly if something like this ever happened. He imagined himself reasonable, composed. But now, he didn't trust himself to speak at all. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Lunch break. Hope your day's going okay. Love you. A lie. A perfectly typed lie. He stared at the words until they blurred. He typed back. You too. Love you. Another lie. He hated himself for sending it. Maya came home at the usual time that evening, 6:12 p.m., right on schedule, as though nothing in her day had deviated at all. She walked into the apartment, kicked off her shoes, and stretched her arms. God, today was long, she said, heading toward the kitchen. I'm starving, are you? She froze mid-step when she saw Ethan sitting at the dining table. He never waited for her like that. Her eyes flickered, confusion, surprise, then something quickly masked. You're home early, she said carefully. He nodded, holding his voice steady. Yeah. Slow day. Oh. Okay. She forced a small smile. Want me to start dinner? Sure. He watched her move around the kitchen, the casual motions, the practiced comfort of a wife preparing a meal, and the sight made his chest ache. She didn't look guilty. She looked normal. That hurt even more. As she chopped vegetables, Ethan studied her closely, the slight glow in her cheeks, the softened expression, the relaxed posture. She looked happy. Not with him, but in general. Whoever that man was. He wasn't just a secret. He was a source of joy. A part of her life Ethan no longer belonged to. He swallowed hard and forced his voice steady. How was work today? She didn't turn around. Good. Busy. Another lie. He almost asked her what time her networking event ended last night. He almost asked her who she met for lunch today. He almost asked her why she smelled faintly of ocean salt and someone else's cologne. But the questions lodged in his throat. He needed more than suspicions. More than one kiss witnessed from a distance. He needed the truth, undeniable, irrefutable truth, in her own words. Only then could he confront her. Only then could he decide what came next. At midnight, Ethan lay awake staring at the ceiling while Maya slept beside him, breathing softly, curled toward him as if nothing were wrong. He felt numb. Every thought, every emotion ran into static. He had never felt so disconnected, from her, from himself, from the life they had built. He glanced at her. At the woman he loved. At the woman he no longer knew. He whispered her name quietly, but she didn't stir. He knew what he had to do. Tomorrow, he would start digging. Not out of vengeance. Out of necessity. He needed answers. He needed to know how long this had been going on. He needed to know who the man was. And he needed to know what part of his marriage, if any, was still real. Ethan closed his eyes. Tomorrow, the hunt for the truth would begin. Ethan stood in the quiet of the San Diego courthouse lobby, the hum of distant voices echoing off the marble walls. Morning light filtered through the tall glass panes, washing everything in a sterile glow. He felt strangely calm, not peaceful, but hollow, as if the storm inside him had finally burned itself out. Sophia arrived late. Her heels clicked sharply on the floor, each step like a metronome marking the end of something long overdue. She looked tired, not guilty, not apologetic, just worn out. The kind of exhaustion that comes from pretending too long. "Ethan," she said softly. He only nodded. They didn't hug. They didn't even try to pretend. The attorney handed them the last set of documents. Ethan signed quickly. Sophia hesitated, her hand shook, and for a moment she closed her eyes as if bracing for impact. Then she signed her name, the ink carving the final line between their lives. When it was done, the attorney stepped away, leaving them in a silence too stuffed with history. Sophia spoke first. "I never wanted it to end this way." "That's the thing, Sophia," Ethan said, his voice low, steady. "Endings don't care what we want." She winced, the smallest, most fragile expression he'd seen from her in months. Ethan looked at her, really looked. The woman he had loved for 12 years. The woman he had trusted with his entire life. The woman who had sat across from him now as a stranger. He wanted to ask why again, even though he already knew the answer, even though hearing it again wouldn't change anything. Instead, he said, "I hope you get whatever it was you were looking for." Tears filled her eyes instantly. Not dramatic tears, quiet ones that trembled but didn't fall. "Ethan, please don't hate me." He thought for a long moment. "I don't," he finally said. "But I don't love you anymore either. And that's worse." She didn't follow him when he turned to leave. She didn't call his name. She didn't run after him or make promises she couldn't keep. She simply stood there in the lobby, arms wrapped around herself, watching the last piece of their life together walk away.